If you're using backing tracks for live playback, then it's very likely you're using a click track. The most basic click track setup would be to send a click to the drummer on an in-ear monitor setup, and then the more kind of elaborate monitoring setup would be everyone on stage having in-ear monitors, and everyone having the choice of hearing the click or not. If you are in the scenario where you can all have your own in-ear monitor setup, then there are a few things you can do beyond just having a click, which is what this video is going to be covering. So I'm going to be talking about, firstly, how to set up your click, or how I set up my click. Secondly, inserting cues such as count-ins and tuning guides, and then also inserting titles of songs onto your click track. So from the technical point of view, we're presuming you have a multi-channel audio interface that's sending your backing tracks, 5, 6, 7, however many backing tracks, to the front of house, and then you're saving 1 or 2 channels to send to your on-stage monitoring. Be that, you know, for me, it's always like channel 8, because I just send out 7 channels and then have channel 8 as a mono click channel. What you can do in your software, Ableton, Reaper, whatever, is separate out all the different elements and send them to the one output. So rather than merging all of your click elements onto one track, which I've done in the past, it's best to keep them all separate, but just use your routing to send them to one single output. So for instance, I would put all of these are all my click elements. So I'd put them into a folder, call it clicks, and then in my routing that would go to a mono output analog 8. Okay, so that's how I would set that up. So first things first, the click. I like to use a 707 kind of sounding cowbell. I tune the first click up either a minor third or a fifth. You can hear the beginning of the bar because it's a higher pitched click. As you can see here, I've pulled this click in, and it's not to the grid because it was obviously created at a different BPM. Our BPM's 30, so I can change my BPM to 120, and still not on the grid. Okay, so that is not a problem, and this is going to be the same for most projects because all your projects are going to be, all your songs are going to be at different tempos. Now, the first thing I would do is tab to transient. So you just hit the tab button, split, tab to transient, split. Okay, so that gives me my 4 clicks. The next thing I would do is drag them to the start and begin, turn snap on, and then just turn them into little chunks here. Okay. So it seems a bit of an unwieldy way of doing it, but I'll explain why I would do it this way. Okay, so we're at 120 now, and the click is working for us. One thing you might notice is that the beginning here of the click is slightly lost. So you can just alt drag the beginning of the click. There, the beginning of the click's clear now. You might actually, in doing this, you might want to turn off create automatic crossfade. So we don't end up with crossfades. So then you glue that chunk of audio together, and then you can just drag it out as a loop. Okay. And because you've glued it to a bar, here we go. It's just going to work for the whole thing. So one thing that you could do is go to the item properties and change the time base to beats, position, length, rate, which is a valid way of doing it. So if I change the tempo, yeah, so the click is changing. Unfortunately, if I change the tempo quite drastically and set so we're getting a crazy degradation of the sample, which isn't ideal. So yes, it is possible to use beats, position, length, rate in the item properties, but I would say the kind of clunky way of doing it is the way that you preserve the actual sound of the click sample. So then what happens if we do change the tempo? Well, you're just going to go back, tab, 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 drag it into the, okay, correct. Correct time, glue them, and then, okay, then we have our loop again, so we can drag that out. So I'm sure there's a quicker way of doing this. I just haven't found a way to preserve the kind of integrity of the sample by doing it. You can use stretch markers and things, but if you really needed to pull the tempo down a lot, you're changing the sound of your click. So the best thing to do here is you have your high click and your low click. So I'd go in here, separate them out, and then these two, I'd render this one and this one as click high and click low. So then when you're making new click tracks for every song, just pull in the high click and the low click. Obviously you can use a MIDI instrument to play your click if you want to. For me, the goal is to reduce the number of variables live on stage. So having a plugin like Contact or Battery running during a show and relying on that to be your click, it introduces a possibility for error that I don't think needs to be there. If you can just create an audio click track, it's far more reliable than a plugin, even though these days plugins aren't prone to crashing as often as maybe they were 5-10 years ago. Again, the principle is reducing the number of variables and the number of things that can go wrong on stage. So you're shaving off margins of error everywhere you can with this kind of setup. It's a really important principle to remember, especially when the gigs get bigger and more people rely on the playback system to work flawlessly. If you're being a little bit experimental with your setup, that's fine. If it's just you and your bandmates on stage and you're all happy to be kind of taking those risks with your playback system maybe crashing now and again because you're pushing it to its limit. If you're working with a crew and all their gear works, if you're in a venue and everything in the venue works fine, then your playback system should also work fine. The other reason that it's useful to have an audio only click track is you might find you don't want the click all the way through the song. If the drummer wants to click all the way through the song but the rest of the band don't, and you have one extra spare channel, you can send a continuous click on, say, channel 8 to the drummer, and then on channel 7 you can send a click track that maybe just gives you click throughout the 16-bar intro where there's no rhythm, and then once the drummer comes in, the band might all say, yeah, we don't want any click track here, so you can cut the audio track. You don't have to be turning plugins on and off with your live playback system. Again, sometimes I've done it where the drummer wants 16 bars of click at the beginning of the song, but we actually want the band then to be playing, there's no backing tracks after that point, so the band just want to play with no click at all, which is a really healthy, good musical decision. So if you're all just getting the same click track and after the first 16 bars of the song everyone's happy to play without a click, again you can just cut that chunk of audio after 16 bars or mute it or have a blank piece of audio for the rest of the song. So that's the click. So next thing is a count-in. Here's a count-in. It's just me saying 1, 2, 3, 4.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Same thing applies. Tab to transient, split, tab. Now you can see I'm tabbing to the transient, but that's still me saying 2. Now I'm saying 3, and there's 4. So I would get rid of anything at the edge. Drag this back to the grid, and then we have, if I put the metronome on,
1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, this can be the start of the song. So you can see here we've got
1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the clicks come in. You could also have the clicks in from the start.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, the count-in can also be very useful for introducing sections or coming out of sections. So for instance, if there's a guitar solo and it's an unusual number of bars or no one can remember when to come out the guitar solo, for safety, you can put 1, 2, 3, 4 just before the start of the next verse. It's really useful for singers as well if they want to be able to interact with the crowd during an instrumental break. You know, you're not necessarily counting bars, just a safety measure, have the 1, 2, 3, 4, that tells them that they can come back in. I've also done this in the past where the singer would have 1, 2, 3, 4 would be me saying 1, 2, 3, 4, and then if there's a cue for the band, so the singer doesn't get confused, the band's cue would be like a robot voice, or I've even done it where it's German. I'm saying 1, 2, 3, 4 instead of 1, 2, 3, 4. Just something so that the band know there's a count-in for them and the singer knows there's a count-in just for the singer. Again, I'm sure there's other variations you can think of for this system, but this is just what's worked for me. The next thing is some tuning cues. Okay, as you can see, that's specific to a song in that key, and we would have put that at the beginning here.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Obviously it's not in time with this tempo, but you get the idea. It's a piano just giving some notes for the singer to latch onto. A lot of times I find this is useful with a lot of intros where it's just kind of bass and low end information during the intro of the song, which can be quite common. So there's no high pads or guitar stuff going on for the singer to hold on to for tuning. So it's useful to feed something into their in-ear monitor to help them tune to. As a side note, it's also, as as an MD, really important to remember or to be able to differentiate between, is the singer struggling because they can't actually technically sing this part, or are they struggling because the environment on stage is making it difficult for them to tune? And 9 times out of 10, I find if the person's up at the front of the stage singing, then they're there because they can do the job. If they're having trouble, there's normally something you can do to kind of find a solution to help them out. One of the things that's really useful to do in that instance, if you're the musical director, is to talk to the monitor engineer and the front of house engineer. If you go to them and say, my singer's having trouble tuning, have you got any ideas? A lot of the time they'll say, yeah, the singer needs a bit more of this instrument in their ears, or they need less of this instrument in their ears. And if you ask the front of house engineer, sometimes it's an issue with they're putting too much bass in the room, and they can dial that down without compromising their mix, which will help the singer out. There's all kinds of things that you might not be aware of from your position on stage, and by going to talk to those two engineers, monitors and front of house, you can learn a lot that will really help you kind of find a solution for the singer. So another element that you can add as a tuning guide is a pad, which would be something like this. Okay, that kind of thing. So we've added a click, a 1, 2, 3, 4 count, some guide notes, tuning guides, and then finally we're going to add a title card.
Filigree.
So that's just the name of the song.
Filigree.
Okay, so again, if I just put that at the start of the song. I could turn the title up a little bit.
Filigree. 2, 3, 4.
So the title's really useful if you're running your whole set list. Every track has a backing track, and you or the playback technician is in charge of launching the song. It's actually especially useful if the playback technician is off stage and launching each track for you, because only they will be able to see the screen that tells them what song is playing, unless you've piped in another monitor on stage that you can see, like an external monitor. 2 reasons. The band might think they're playing one song, and the playback technician will start another song, a la Ashley Simpson. If you have a title card at the beginning of a track, you can immediately say, before the music starts, stop the track. This is the wrong. We're all ready for the wrong song. It's a really good safety mechanism there. If you're on stage launching the track again, and you launch one song, the singer thinks they're about to start another song, they can turn to you and go stop. You'd normally have 1 or 2 bars of click before the music starts. Again, another reason why it's very important that everyone knows what song it is an example would be the singer starts singing the minute the music starts. So you got a bar or 2 counting, and then the singer starts. If that's the song they think they're singing and it's not, and it's something completely different, they're going to look bad. So the title card is very simple but very, very useful. Just a quick note on the tuning cues. Sorry to flip backwards. The pad sound can be useful, but it can get lost on stage if there's a lot of other things going on. Pad sound's normally good if there's kind of just some percussion elements going on, not a lot of bass, and no one else is really playing anything. That can be really nice for the singer to sing into, to have something to sing into, so they don't feel that they're completely exposed. If there's quite a lot going on, I find that pianos and bell sounds really cut through and are easier for singers to tune to in a busy mix. So pads are useful, pianos and bell sounds are even more useful, but the most useful thing I've found for a singer to latch onto if there's any kind of odd harmonics or whatever happening on stage with the bass frequencies, and suddenly you can't quite hear, actually, is it a G or a D or a C? It's their own voice. Their own voice is very easy for them to tune to because they know what that feels like in their body. They know exactly how it should sound because it's their voice. So if you have lead vocal stems from the album that you can use as reference, you can put a chunk of their own voice, like the first line of the verse, just looped for a couple of bars before they come in. And I think that's kind of the first thing I would try if the singer's really having trouble latching onto something to tune to. Again, it doesn't mean that they're a bad singer. What it means is something odd is happening on stage with the frequencies, and the notes can sometimes sound completely weird to your ear, and it's perfectly normal, especially with electronic music. You're in a different venue every night. Every venue has its own different sonic issues, and we need help sometimes. So again, don't look at this as anything along the lines of your okay. So just to clarify, one thing that I really don't subscribe to is putting lead vocals on track out front of house. Backing vocals and backing vocal effects are there to support, and that's totally fine. Putting lead vocal out front coming off a backing track is it's trying to think of a good word for it. It's a very serious decision to make, and once you've made that decision, it's a different type of show. We're talking about a system that helps a lead singer who's singing live, and the system supports them using this technology. Sorry, it suddenly got very serious, but I think it's a really serious issue with live music. Some people in the audience might think that they're watching a singer miming, and I've heard people come out after a gig and say, oh, well, they were miming, when I've actually known the singer wasn't miming, and I've been the person on stage in charge of everything happening, and they're just a good singer. It's a shame that in this day and age, it's hard to believe that someone can be that good a singer that it sounds perfect, but it's generally the case. There are some amazing singers out there, and we can use these systems to support them and to help them deliver the best performance they can do. That's basically the click system that I use, and I've used for quite a few years now. It's all really useful stuff. You don't have to use it all. Again, like I said earlier, there's more than one way to skin a cat, as they say. There are so many ways to do things in Reaper and in Ableton. I think my way is probably fairly clunky, but again, going back to the other thing I said earlier, I like my system to be very safe and reliable, so I'll just do things a very straightforward, simple way. It's kind of boring, but it works because the most important thing is not what's going on behind the scenes, really. The most important thing is that the musicians on stage are supported by this technology to give their best performance. So it should do its job and get out of the way and be as invisible and as useful as possible. If you've got any comments or suggestions on how to improve this system, please make a comment below, or send me an email, or subscribe to the mailing list, or subscribe to the channel. And I hope this has been useful to someone out there, and I'll see you all soon. Thanks very much.